We're here at a recreation of Jerusalem, not at the time of Jesus, but right before it was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD, but generally pretty close to what it would have been like at the time of Jesus. We're here at the north end of the city, and we see the city wall. Here is the pool of Bethesda, where Jesus healed the paralytic. Bethesda.
Yes, I was corrected.
Where they would wait for the waters to be stirred, and Jesus healed that man there. These waters would have been collected by rainwater and little canal system, so not clean water year-round, but a collection point. Here we're at the Temple Mount. We have Pilate's military location here at the northwest corner, and this Temple Mount would have been built by Herod. And here we have the East Gate, where high priests would enter, and we also think that Jesus would have entered in his triumphal entry into this gate, coming down from the Mount of Olives, which is to the east here where I'm standing. Inside we have the temple. This is a temple that originally would have been built in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, and then was added on to and expanded by Herod. And this outer court was known as the Gentiles' court. There's a little fence, a little white fence around the temple that keeps the Gentiles back. They were not allowed to enter. In front here, this area would be the women's court. Women were not allowed inside the temple walls. We have a series of doors leading into the holy place, or the outer courts, then the holy place, and then inside the Holy of Holies. This area, built by Herod, is known as, the pillars are known as Solomon's Portico, and then this merchant area that Herod built. It's the main entrance to the temple. Wide steps, large area, and then we have, this would be known as the City of David. So the original area where David's palace would have been, in this smaller walled city in this long shape, because there was a spring here. And this is where David's original Jerusalem city would have been, and then where Solomon would have built the temple, not the full Temple Mount walls in Jerusalem's day, but the temple building there, but then that was torn down by the Babylonians. Down here we have a pool of water, a fresh spring. Here we have the rest of the city. This on the hill would be the poor areas where the poor people would live, and then all the paths lead down to this pool to get water. And up above we have the richer areas. The building with a pyramid-looking roof is known as the burial place of David. The burial place of David. And right behind it is where we believe Jesus would have met. No, in front of it, yes. In front of it here is a common living area where Jesus may have had the Last Supper in the upper room by following an Essene man who was noted because he was actually carrying water on his head. Something men normally didn't do, but Essenes were an all-men community. And they followed him to where he was staying, and most likely had the Last Supper in that building there. Over here we have where Herod's palaces would have been, and these interesting roofs that would have collected the rainwater for his pools in his courtyard. And here we have the citadel, and we are staying This is the Jaffa Gate, and we're staying right in this area, modern Jerusalem. But there are Turkish buildings and Turkish walls there now where we're staying. So you see 2 layers of walls. The inner layers of walls would have been the original city of Jesus' time. And then after Jesus' time, the city continued to expand. And then they put up these walls on an outer boundary as they got established to resist their Roman oppression. And then in 70 AD, this city was sieged for 2 years and then destroyed in 70 AD. So out here is the newer city that would have been in about, this would have lasted till about 70 AD. And this is a model recreation outside of Jerusalem, well, in Jerusalem, based on archaeology, based on historical books, and based on religious books and the New Testament, and all things were considered to get the most accurate representation of what Jerusalem would have been like in early 1st century. Pretty cool. Below us is the valley of Elah, I think, where David fought Goliath. The Philistines on that side, Israelites on this side. This way we have...
They can't see your arm, it's not helping me.
This way we have Bethlehem, where David would have come from, through the valley to deliver the bread and cheese to his brothers. And this way is where the Philistines would have fled back to their hometowns of Gath, and the Israelites in pursuit after David slew the giant, and
your fingers aren't in my video.
Would have pursued them this way towards their homes, Gath this way, and the Philistine in the coastal plains, Mediterranean's out there. I think I can see it. Here we are in Israel, where it all happened.
Mount of Olives is a mount. It's actually a range of hills, and that's from where, from certain elevation, you can observe the whole historical area of Jerusalem. And you are going to see the same field where a big bunch of Bible happened, right? The same field, but in our days. And I emphasize in our days because majority of the things that you can see in our days on the same terrain, on the same topography, they're not coming from biblical times at all. Look on your right hand side, what you can observe here, wall, and we call it city wall. That's where you live. You live inside the current walls of what you call old city wall. So modern Jerusalem is much larger. Look on your left hand side. All of the neighborhoods around form a municipality of 850,000 inhabitants. But here when we are passing by the Damascus Gate, this is the major entrance to old Jerusalem from the north, and that's where in the city walls we have population of 22,000. You don't have to remember all of them.
Salem, that original Jebus city, Salem, that Abraham paid taxes to Melchizedek. It was here that Abraham came to offer his son Isaac on Mount Moriah as they came up from the ridge route to the south, and he overlooked from that southern hill and was going to sacrifice until God provided a lamb. It was here that Joshua defeated Adonai-Zedek when Joshua came in and conquered the land. It was here that David conquered the Jebusites and built the city of David right down that little tongue-shaped area that we'll be exploring in a couple of days. It was here that David ruled for over 30 years, and the kingdom expanded to its greatest potential, and he took care of most of the enemies and set the stage for his son Solomon to rule. It was here that David saw the angel of the Lord who had come to slay the city because of David counting the census and the numbers, and at that point in time God withheld his wrath. It was here that David bought the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite, which is what we now call Temple Mount, just that natural little bump. And he bought that for a future temple. On that little threshing floor, that bump, that's where Solomon built that very first temple. It was here in Jerusalem that Solomon amassed over 1,400 chariots and 20,000 horses. It was here that the Queen of Sheba traveled 1,400 miles to experience Solomon because of his huge reputation, to share in the wealth and experience and knowledge that he had. It was here that Jehoshaphat, one of the good kings, reigned for those 25 years. It was here that the Assyrian Sennacherib surrounded Jerusalem with 185,000 Assyrian troops. And when you read on his palace wall hangings, he talked about how he had surrounded Jerusalem and had it like a bird in the cage and was ready to demolish it. And again, at that point in time, the angel of the Lord came and 185,000 Assyrians killed in one day. And Sennacherib comes back to Assyria and he is assassinated because he failed in his mission down here. It was here that Josiah, at the age of 8, think of those of you that have 8-year-olds, became king of the nation of Israel. And when he was 26, he discovered the book of the law that had been hidden in the temple. It was languishing. The people had not been following the law. And he said, I'm going to turn my people, my nation, back to following Jehovah. It was here that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, destroyed the temple in 586 BC, and he took over 10,000 Israelites into Babylonian captivity in 3 different waves. It was here that Ezra and Nehemiah and Zerubbabel returned in 3 different waves, and they rebuilt the temple, they rebuilt the city, and they rebuilt the people, got them back to worshiping the Lord after coming out of that 70-year captivity. And it was here that King Herod took what had been that small rebuilt temple, still that second temple, and enlarged it into one of the great wonders of the world. Herod's temple on the Temple Mount was so spectacular, it was estimated that it was about 2 times as tall as the Dome of the Rock that you're looking at now. People from Rome would book vacations to come here to see all of Herod's building projects. He was massive in terms of what he built. Tomorrow morning we'll go to one of those fortresses that he built, and we'll start to talk about King Herod a little bit more. Why is Jerusalem such a critical city? Matthew says this is the city of the great king. He gives it that title. It was here that Jesus was dedicated in the temple at 40 days of age. Remember Simeon and Anna, and they were so happy because the prophecies that they had been hearing about had now been fulfilled in front of them. It was here, right up here at age 12. You guys all know from reading your harmonies, very little written about the life of Jesus in those first 30 years. That's one of the snapshot stories, the only one other than his birth and infancy. And he's up here, 12. It's the end of his 12th year, so this is his bar mitzvah. And so he's up here and he gets left behind. Yeah, you guys that are parents, all of us in youth ministry, long before cell phones. I mean, you had a sweeper at every one of those youth ministries, and all of us have stories ourselves or friends that left someone behind. But how do you leave the Son of God behind? I mean, that would have been a major demerit there. So, and we're going to walk tomorrow. We're going to walk the bottom 4th of that Wadi Kelt, and you will experience on that walk what Jesus' parents did when they're looking around and going, I thought he was with you. And so we'll spend some time down there tomorrow. It was here that Jesus did many, many of his miracles as he came down to Jerusalem, especially when you're talking about phase 5 and his ministry.
We're here at the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall.
This is, I want to explain it. So in the Temple Mount, the Holy of Holies was closest to the western edge of the Temple Mount. And so,
Up above.
Yep, so we are, behind us, we would be looking east to that wall. That is the westernmost wall of the Temple Mount. So this wall is the closest to the holy place where God dwelled. So this is why this wall is significant.
And currently, there's a mosque up there, so Jews are not allowed. So this is as close as they can get to their holy place. And we were able to walk up to the wall. There's a women's side and a men's side. It's separate. And we met an amazing family that is here visiting from Florida. They're a Jewish family, and they have 4 boys, and we didn't know if we could go up, and if we didn't have the right clothes on. They told us we could go, and we touched the walls, and we heard people praying and reading scripture in Hebrew, and rocking back and forth a lot, and Jessica saw women crying into their Bibles
And leaving notes.
reading prayers. Yeah.
Oh yeah, prayers.
So
That was
very
really neat.
special place.
Yeah.